Hi everyone, it's Audrey. I just wanted to share some revelations I've had in the last couple of weeks. This is not going to be my testimony because I've never actually wrote it down in a way that I can share it, and I didn't really have time to even write my revelations in the right way. I just put some key points, so hopefully I could share this in a clear way. So I just had a prayer meeting and it was powerful, and it was confirmation. Somebody prayed for me and we prayed for each other. I prayed for most people, and they actually, without knowing, prophetically said everything that was in my revelation. So it was kind of a confirmation to share this. There's this one prophetic couple, Isabella and Ivan Alum, I hope it's taping, that I have always been inspired by. And in their messages, even though he passed away and she's still ministering around the world, she's one of my favorite prophetic voices. They had taught that when you get a prophetic word, to always, if you know it's from the Lord, and I knew these ones were from the Lord, to stand on that and not go to the left or right from what the prophetic word is, because it's confirmation. So if you have an open door and it's not going in line with the words, then it's not God's way. So I always stood on that, and I stood on these words with like everything in me. There was several different words. I've had many prophetic words, and a lot. You have to test the words. So a lot, I don't keep or I don't take seriously, but these words I stood on for many years, and I memorized them. Okay, so I have tapes and CDs put away somewhere. For years, I stood on them because I was going through so much turmoil when I was in New Jersey and in New York, mostly New Jersey at that time, that it was the only thing that kept me to look forward to, just moving forward in life, besides reading books about heaven and hell and just knowing I was going to heaven with Jesus. And then, witnessing on the boardwalks and beaches and things like that, because I had this power or excitement because of the prophetic words and reading the books. So I always took my prophetic words that I knew were from God seriously. One of the prophetic words was from Isabella about being in a Cinderella type childhood where, I felt like a prison in there, and that God was going to take me out of this prison, and that the walls were going to come down, and that I was going to share my story, and it was going to help many people to have hope for their future, because I'm going to be able to overcome so many obstacles. And she was very specific. It was 10-minute long. It was like God speaking to me directly. In fact, I was just talking to my old friend Lisa, and she reminded me about it. She goes, Audrey, I feel like you're living in the Isabella type days, she knows what I'm dealing with. And I was like, I stand on those words. But I hadn't really been thinking about Isabella's words, and it was about, that I was going to go through all these turmoil and just being stuck, but that God had a mountaintop of vision, and that after I got unstuck, that God was going to use me mightily for the kingdom of God. But it was 10 minutes. It was going on about what was going on at the time in New Jersey, all the pain and suffering I was going through, all the things in my childhood with the Cinderella type childhood that I had. So, and that I was going to write a book, and that it was going to help many, many people around the world. So years later, I had there's three different situations. I had many words from Michael Bacon in New Jersey, and I stood on those words. That was in 2012, 2013, I think it was, and I literally stood on them, and I would test each scenario I was going through to see if I should go this way, that way. And he had called me out several times. I was watching him for many years on his weekly broadcast, that I was going to move to the southeast part of Florida, southeast part of the United States. And he had said Florida maybe once or twice as well. But that was like 8 years before I moved. So he said, wait on it, start ministry, now. He saw me writing a book, and that my book was going to help many people, but not right away. that was on one of the several of the broadcasts that that he had said. That was never on tape. I have different tapes. But anyway, so I always stood on Isabella and Michael Bacon's words because I just knew it was from God. So I never tried to move to Florida. I never, it happened 8 years later. I think it was like 8 years that I had to wait for those words to even think about moving. When I got the call from my mother, I knew right away that I was supposed to move. It was a supernatural encounter with my mother and just revelation that this was the way to go. And God opened the doors to move here. I'm not going to get into that whole story. That will take another week. But once, I had moved here, I went through a lot of different things. And the Lord told me to continue writing my story, after a whole situation happened. And since I'm not sharing my testimony, I'm not going to get into all of that. But a lot more happened. And I thought my book was done. I was actually selling it in New Jersey, not making a lot. I had it on Amazon, but I never thought I would add more. But the Lord said, woke me up several times to continue writing my story. So I did. I started writing, and he actually had me stamp the book and seal it. Many people saw it. Even the girl who was praying for me today, she's very prophetic. She saw it sealed and stamped, but I knew the Lord told me to seal it. But anyway, so after I sealed the book, nothing happened that the Lord had showed me. And I know what he showed me, and I had the prophetic words, but it wasn't the way I thought. And I was like, I know I'm going in your direction, Lord, and there's all these detours, but, I'm not going to, I'm just not going to question you. If it happens, it happens. If not, I'm just going to continue with this detour or whatever you're doing. Because I know I'm in your path. I'm living holy, and the steps of a righteous man availeth much and are ordered by the Lord, sorry. And I was walking in his ways and just being obedient, and he took me in a totally different direction. And I knew I was going in the right direction, where I am now, which doesn't make a lot of sense because it didn't, line up with the way I thought it was going to be. But one of the things that he had said is, you don't know the end from the beginning. God doesn't show you that. And Isabella had said that in the first prophecy. She goes, you want to know the end from the beginning, the first page and the last page. And she actually said that in the prophetic word, and I just got chills. But it's a walk of faith, and he'll show you one step at a time. It's like a 10-minute prophetic word, like I had said. Well, anyway, so years later, okay, this is where the revelation comes, because this whole time, I'm sure, I don't know what people are saying, and God's been teaching me not to care, to just walk in the ways of the Lord and, not worry about what people think, but just be obedient to what he says each step, because a lot of the things that have happened have not been my fault. I have been falsely accused of a lot of things, and that's not why I'm sharing this, but, I had many words. I was going to be like a Joseph, and I was thrown in a pit. So I didn't know, all these things were going to happen. And that was one of the things Isabella said. She said, I see you, like a Joseph, and, that you're going to have success in many areas, and you're going to be at a crossroads. I see you this was years later. She had a different prophetic word, at a crossroads, and you're going to, pick a direction, and then she said, you're going to have money and time to travel, and success is going to come from it, and you're like a Joseph. Now, let me share. The reason why I'm sharing that is because this whole time that I was standing on Michael Bacon's word, which is a true word, definitely, I'm just thinking that. But about a week ago or 2 weeks, he woke me up and reminded me of Isabella's word. And it was like blocked, because sometimes he doesn't show you the whole picture. And I'm saying there's so much more to this, because I had a revelation last night. But he doesn't show you the whole picture, but he'll give you glimpses and then remind you of things out of nowhere. And then when I woke up with that, I was like, so, there's going to be another direction that opens, and it's going to be a crossroads. And normally I wouldn't share this because I know that people pray against whatever, I say, but I just wanted to be obedient with this because he gave me permission to share, and God's will be done no matter what. And, it's just going to happen. So I was like, Lord, it makes so much sense because, people have,